and welcome to another Seven Things EMS episode. My name is Dan Limmer, and I am thrilled to have with us for this session David Fifer. David is an assistant professor at Eastern Kentucky University, the director of the Center for Wilderness and Outdoor Public Safety, and a founding coordinator of Red Star, a wilderness EMS team for his little part of Kentucky right there. Well, his wilderness is probably a big part, isn't it? So I want to welcome you.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Now I'm gonna say we don't have a lot of fluff here, but there's one thing I'm gonna tell you, and we talked about this before we started, is that I really don't know a lot about wilderness. For me, wilderness is when the Marriott is full and I have to stay at the Fairfield. Right,
Right.
that's as close as I've been to wilderness in my life. So I think that with that being said, that I will learn as much from this as anyone that's listening, and I do think it's a topic that's people are really paying attention to now, from the certifications that you can get in it to just realizing how different it is.
Yeah, there's a real renaissance happening right now in wilderness CMS. It actually reminds me a little bit of what happened with sort of like tactical and combat medicine, I guess, broadly speaking.
Right.
Over the past 20 years, it went from being a real niche kind of a thing to being something that's very commonplace. You have TCCC and TECC that are very accessible now, and wilderness EMS is going through something very similar.
Well, I think that leads us right to the first of our seven things, and which I love what you've done. You've got some concepts here, you've got some clinical here. It comes together really well. Number one is that wilderness medicine and wilderness EMS are distinct things. They're different, it sounds like.
That's right. Wilderness EMS is really a subset of wilderness medicine. So let's start with that. Wilderness medicine is a very broad field, and it includes every kind of wilderness environment that you could think of, from high altitude to low deserts, marine, mountaineering in the Himalayas, jungles, and every climb and environment you can think of. Wilderness medicine is basically about providing medicine in those kinds of places. And so some of the characteristics of wilderness medicine beyond the obvious like wilderness is things like improvisation. So wilderness medicine training sort of classically emphasizes using found materials, using limited resources, and a lot of kind of improvisational kinds of things. And so listeners might have heard of training like wilderness first aid. They might have heard of a wilderness first responder course, or what we call WOOFer. And so these are training courses that are very popular amongst people who spend a lot of time in the outdoors, whether it's Boy Scout troop leaders or rock climbing guides, and certainly plenty of healthcare providers take those kinds of courses as well. The difference between that and wilderness EMS is that wilderness EMS is not about improvisation. Wilderness EMS is about organized delivery of healthcare, just the same as EMS in any other environment. So it's really about systems of care. So wilderness medicine might sort of emphasize how to improvise a splint out of hiking poles or sticks or sleeping pads. Wilderness EMS is really more about how do you do safe procedural sedation in the woods to be able to maybe manipulate somebody's extremely painful, angulated, broken leg to be able to put it in, a proper kind of a splint. And
Wow.
so it's that kind of difference. And if I used an example there, like procedural sedation, that's pretty high end, right? But that's really what wilderness EMS is about. So think about everything that's a part of typical EMS, and now you're basically adapting that into wilderness environments. So there's some overlap there. In wilderness EMS, you basically have what you can carry. So it's limited resources. It is still a ethos, I guess, of a little bit of improvisation. You have to be creative sometimes with the limited supplies that you have. But that's the big distinction there, is basically wilderness medicine is this very, 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 very broad field. Wilderness EMS is basically I'm an on duty paramedic, I'm an on duty EMT, I'm an on duty EMS physician, and I now need to respond into a wilderness environment. What are the specialized practices, knowledge, equipment, and so forth that I need to bring with me?